It says I'm live. Good morning. It's good to be live and with you again for another day of Bhagavad Gita Sadhana. It's raining. That's great. It's said to be cleansing for the world when it rains, especially as we're gearing up for a rather large holiday. And we'll be focusing on some things that might seem a little darker. And that's because we are preparing for a holiday that celebrates the dark night of the soul. And if you're wondering, why would I celebrate that? Keep tuning in. Um, Today, we're going back to a topic that we talked about for a few videos, several videos ago. I can't remember exactly when, but it's the idea of death and how death was viewed in the time that and the culture that the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita were written. And talked about, for example, the personification of death, Yama, was also considered the personification of destiny or duty, dharma, law. Okay. So those two are interchangeable, and that death was often exhorted to be seen as a teacher. There's stories about death being a teacher, of death loving humanity, and of death as being killed by Shiv. And then humanity went, we need death. Bring him back, bring him back. And then death returns to us. So, with all that cultural background about death, and I'd like you to think of your own cultural background on death. For example, if you were brought up in any specific religious tradition, what did it say about death? Well, for example, the one I was brought up in said, when you die, if you get your last rites, especially, you go to confession and all that, you go to heaven. And heaven's this great place. And you get to stay there forever with all the people that you've lost, as long as they're not in the bad place, that is. And then as a youth, as a very young child, actually having imbibed that, I would get upset or get confused. I would get confused when people got upset about people dying, especially people that seem to be suffering because don't they have this great heaven to go to? So I noticed this disconnect. And this disconnect between what we are taught or what we believe and what we experience or do in daily life is one of the biggest challenges we have to samatvam, which again, remember we talked about yesterday, could mean equanimity or meaning essentially true, being your essentially true self. For example, I was talking with my partner, and I've had experiences of death that lead me to believe a certain thing from my experience. But I was in a position where I was about to die. And even though I had thought intellectually, I'm okay with death, I know what's going to happen, it's going to be fine, I prepared, da da da. When the moment hit, I was like, and I fought to stay alive. And all thoughts of pleasant afterlife, whether from my religious tradition or from my own studies, just kind of went out the window. And that happens to us a lot. So in that moment, I really lost my equanimity because I forgot. There was that disconnect between what I was taught, what I knew, and then what I was experiencing. And we need to find a way to forgive ourselves for that, because that, my friends, is the human condition. And Arjun, being human, is experiencing this right now at the start of the Gita, where he goes, I'm looking out over the battlefield and I have to kill these people. And even though I know death is not a horrible thing, that it's not the end, that there's something after, I can't bring myself to be okay with that. I can't bring myself to be okay with the fact that people I know and love are going to die. I can't bring myself to be okay with the fact that I could possibly die. And Krishna responds early on in chapter 2. So, verse 11, Krishna's listened to Arjuna expressing his doubts, and he says, while you seem to speak wise words, all right? How often does this happen to us in life? We seem to speak wise words. We seem to be drawing on wisdom. We are drawing on things we know, that we believe. And yet, we're not able to connect them to our lives daily. We fall away from it. One example I often give is most spiritual traditions say, be truthful. And yet, in so many ways in daily life, we are not. You can think of, these are just examples. You don't take them personally, but lying a little bit on your taxes, or a little white lie to a police officer that pulls you over. Was I speeding? I didn't know I was speeding. My speedometer is broken, or something along those lines. And those disconnects actually cause us a lot of distress, as Arjuna is demonstrating. One of the things Krishna is saying right off the bat is we have to get back in touch with what we know at our core and live from that. So today, as we do the practices, especially the meditation, you're invited to contemplate, what do I know to be true? Not just what you're taught to be true, but in your life. Have you experienced, for example, that telling the truth is better than lying? Not even just for the other person, but how you feel and how you sleep at night. What do you know to be true? And are you living it? You could even think about, what would life be like if I lived this? Maybe if other people who knew it to be true lived it also. What would life be like? All right. So we'll practice. We'll do a round of tree pose. I've got a tree growing out of my head, which is fabulous. And then I'll be sitting out in the rain like the trees, getting nice and washed, ready to grow. Let's do our pose. All right. Let's switch sides. All right. Birds are joining me in the rain. Let's prepare for meditation. As you do, the dedication for today's practice is you. Yes, you. I'm doing my practice for you. Hopefully you can do that for yourself as well. What do you know to be true? Are you living it? And what would life be like if you did? See you in 5. Welcome back. There is another reason I'm dedicating today's practice to you. That is, I could just be doing my practice on my own, like come out here, just be out here for a few minutes, not getting comfortable sitting because it's raining. But when I talk to you, it gives me an opportunity to say things, and then I listen. I go, I should be listening to myself and what I say. So notice that, like if you're telling somebody today or in the near future, this is some advice or this is some guidance, and then do I listen to myself? Do you listen to yourself? Because you have this innate knowledge, and that's part of the thing with the Gita, is Krishna's not telling Arjuna or commanding him what to do. He's helping him realize he already knows. So may you go through the day with that knowledge, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Till then.